I'm blessed to have discovered Jesus as a 19-year-old, which means I've known the Lord and walked with Him all of my adult life. I have weaved in and out of many different seasons, many different jobs and ministries, and many different geographical locations. And wherever I go, Jesus goes with me, or rather goes before me, leading the way and assuring me that whatever the challenges, whatever the new scenarios, all will be well. The word that we Christians love to use in connection with God's constancy in our lives is faithful. God is truly faithful. But what God's faithfulness does not mean is that He will never allow us to experience lean times or difficult times or severe challenges or intense pain. As I look at the history of my own life, I seem to have alternated between seasons of feast and seasons of famine. Thank God the good seasons lasted longer than the bad ones, for sure, but those heart-pounding, sweaty palms, dry throat times leave some pretty deep memories that I can never forget. Once, when I was without a job and we were without money, an old friend and his wife stopped by our house out of the blue. They were traveling through our area on their way to a conference. They didn't stay long, just a few hours, and when the visit was over, we saw them to their vehicle and watched them drive down our little lane. But they hadn't gone but 100 yards or so when they stopped and turned around and came back. When they got out of their car, my friend told me that he felt God was moving on his heart to give us some money, and he then opened his wallet and gave us every dollar that was in it. I think it may have amounted to $80 or so, an enormous amount to us at the time. It was enough money for us to eat on and live on for another week or so. And I knew this was not just money from a friend, it was provision from our best friend, Jesus Christ. But no financial hard times could match the blow I experienced one evening in August 2005. I had just started a new ministry, and coming home one evening, I noticed that my wife was in our bedroom with the door locked, which was unusual. When she came out, she was carrying our phone in a sort of a secretive manner, hiding it by her side. It almost seemed as though she was trying to sneak it back to its cradle in our living area. I became curious, and when I had a chance, I picked it up and looked up the last number that had been dialed. It was a local number, and I soon discovered she was in an adulterous relationship with a man that she worked with. It was the most painful time in my entire life, made all the more so when it turned out there was no coming back for her. I ended up divorcing after 30 years of marriage and found myself playing Mr. Mom to our 3 children who were still living at home. There was no instant deliverance from the intense emotional pain, the shock, and the bewilderment that I experienced. In time, Jesus did provide healing balm that I so desperately needed, but it took the better part of a year. Jesus said, "Unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it produces much fruit." Those of us who eagerly desire fruitfulness are going to have to die in some way or another, and that was my death. God's faithfulness did not prevent Him from allowing it. I've been in the ministry off and on since my 20s, but I can honestly say that the fruitfulness of my years since that betrayal has far exceeded all the combined ministry efforts of my years before then. Since then, there have been multiple mission trips to Africa, hundreds of articles written, hundreds of videos produced, YouTube channels established that are touching tens of thousands of people all over the world, and so many people responded to Christ in those African crusades. In addition to all this, I met and married a lovely lady from Nigeria named Benedicta, who works by my side in the ministry. And all of this has happened since that traumatic, terrible time. As long as the grain stays in the bag, according to Jesus, nothing happens, but when it falls to the ground and dies, it produces much fruit. Has God been faithful to me? You'd better believe He has. Has He kept me from all pain, all hard times, and desperate circumstances? You'd better believe He has not. Indeed, leading us in and out of those valleys of the shadow of death is part and parcel of His faithfulness. But the greatest demonstration of God's faithfulness is that at the age of 19, He drew me to His Son. I received Jesus as my Lord and Savior, embracing His death on the cross for my sins and His resurrection from the dead, and I gave my life to Him. This was my faithful God who loved me from the foundation of the world, revealing Himself and His Son to me. And He's been demonstrating His faithfulness to me in thousands of ways ever since.